You are in England, year 1268, living as a servant in the imposing Goodrich Castle. The stone walls that surround you offer protection from outside dangers, but trap inside something far more insidious: the stench of unwashed bodies, rotting, food scraps, and the ever-present odor from the castle's rudimentary waste system. This is your reality, and it is nothing like the romantic tales sung by traveling minstrels. The cold stone floor numbed my feet as I hurried through the dimly lit corridor. Dawn had barely broken, but Castle Goodrich was already stirring with activity. I clutched my woolen tunic closer, trying to ward off the perpetual chill that permeated every corner of this massive stone structure. The small arrow-slit windows allowed thin beams of morning light to penetrate the gloom, barely enough to illuminate my path to the kitchens where my daily duties awaited. "Margaret, you are late again," Master Cook bellowed as I slipped through the doorway, his face, perpetually flushed from the heat of the cooking fires, contorted with displeasure. "Forgive me, Master Cook. Lady Elizabeth required extra attention this morning. Her monthly courses have begun, and he raised a meaty hand to silence me. Spare me the womanly details. The bread needs kneading, and the morning pottage must be prepared before Lord William descends for his meal." The kitchen was already a hive of frenzied activity. A massive cauldron of water bubbled over the central hearth, while 3 boys turned spits laden with pheasants for the midday meal. The heat was oppressive, a stark contrast to the frigid air in the rest of the castle. Sweat began to form on my brow almost immediately as I took my position at the wooden preparation table. Next to me, Eliza, a girl of no more than 12 summers, chopped onions with practiced efficiency. "Lady Margaret has returned to grace us with her presence," she whispered with a smirk. "Did you get to brush the lady's golden locks this morning?" I elbowed her playfully. "Better than scrubbing chamber pots, which is what awaits you if you do not mind your tongue." Our banter was interrupted by a commotion at the kitchen entrance. Sir Richard, the castle's master-at-arms, strode in with his usual air of importance. Unlike most knights, who barely acknowledged the existence of kitchen servants, Sir Richard had always shown kindness to the staff, particularly to me. "Master Cook," he announced, "Lord William wishes to inform you that he will be hosting the Sheriff of Hereford tonight. 20 additional guests will require feeding." Master Cook's face paled visibly. 20, with only a few hours. Notice impossible. Sir Richard's eyes scanned the kitchen until they found mine. He offered a small smile before returning his attention to the frantic cook. "Lord William suggests you might serve the new French dish blanc mange, I believe. It is called blanc mange requires almonds. We have none." Master Cook's voice rose to a near shriek. "Then send someone to the village market," Sir Richard replied calmly. Master Cook's gaze followed Sir Richard's to where I stood. "Margaret, you know what almonds look like, do you not? Take Thomas with you and go to the village immediately." My heart leapt. A chance to escape the castle walls, even briefly, was rare indeed. "Yes, Master Cook, right away." As I hurried to find Thomas, the stable boy, Sir Richard fell into step beside me. "A fine morning for a walk to the village, would you not agree, Margaret?" His voice was low, meant only for my ears. "Indeed, Sir Knight. Far better than sweating over a cauldron all day." "Be careful on the road," he cautioned, his tone suddenly serious. "There have been reports of outlaws in the forest." I glanced up, surprised by his concern. "We shall stay to the main path, Sir Richard." He reached into his pouch and pressed something into my palm. I looked down to see 3 silver pennies, a small fortune for someone of my station. For the almonds, he explained, and perhaps a ribbon for your hair, if there is any left over. Before I could thank him, he was gone, striding down the corridor toward the practice yard where the sounds of clashing wooden swords already filled the air. Thomas was waiting by the gatehouse, his gangly frame bouncing with excitement at the prospect of adventure. At 16, he was a year older than me, but his enthusiasm often made him seem much younger. "Is it true?" he asked breathlessly. "We are to go to the village." I nodded, showing him the silver pennies. His eyes widened. 3 pennies. We could buy half the market with that. "We are to buy almonds for blank mange," I corrected. Him, nothing more. As we passed beneath the gatehouse archway, the portcullis creaking above our heads, I could not help but feel a sense of liberation. The castle behind us, massive and imposing with its thick walls and towers, seemed to shrink slightly as we walked the winding path toward the village. Little did I know that this simple errand would set in motion events that would change my life forever. For as we descended the hill toward the village, a cloud of smoke rose in the distance, thick, black, and ominous. The village was burning. Thomas grabbed my arm. "Margaret, look." I stared in horror as flames licked the sky above the thatched roofs of the village. Even from this distance, we could hear screams. "We must go back," Thomas urged, pulling at my sleeve. "Tell Lord William." But something made me hesitate. The village was burning, yes, but not all of it. The flames seemed concentrated in one area, the market. And moving away from the flames, coming toward us on the road, was a group of mounted men. Their armor glinted in the morning sun. "Hide," I hissed, pulling Thomas behind a large oak tree just off the path. We crouched there, hearts pounding, as the riders approached. Through the branches, I caught glimpses of their heraldry, a black boar on a crimson field, the emblem of Baron Mortimer, Lord William's bitter rival. "This changes nothing," I heard one rider say as they passed our hiding place. "Lord William will still have to answer for his transgressions. The king will see to that. And if he refuses?" asked another. The first rider laughed, a cold sound that sent shivers down my spine. "Then we shall return with more than torches." When they had passed, Thomas and I emerged from our hiding place. The village still burned in the distance. "We must tell Lord William," Thomas insisted, and this time I nodded in agreement. As we raced back up the hill toward Castle Goodrich, one thought kept repeating in my mind. Something was terribly wrong, and I had just become entangled in matters far beyond my station. The news of the village burning spread through Castle Goodrich like wildfire. When Thomas and I returned, breathless and wide-eyed, the guards at the gatehouse immediately summoned Sir Richard. The knight's face darkened as we recounted what we had seen and heard. "You did well to return," he said, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "I must inform Lord William immediately." As Sir Richard strode away, Master Cook appeared, his face a mask of fury. "Where are my almonds?" he demanded. "The village market is burning," I explained. "Baron Mortimer's men burning. Or not, Lord William expects blank mange tonight," he interrupted, his jowls quivering with indignation. 20 nobles will be dining in the great hall, and I am expected to produce a feast fit for a king. Before he could continue his tirade, a horn sounded from the battlement's 3 short blasts, followed by one long one, the signal for all castle residents to gather in the great hall. Master Cook's anger transformed into concern. "This cannot be good," he muttered, wiping his hands on his apron. "Come along," all of you. The entire kitchen staff followed Master Cook through the corridors and up the winding stone staircase that led to the great hall. I had entered this room only a handful of times before, usually to serve at important feasts or to clean in preparation for special events. It was the heart of castle life, where Lord William conducted business, rendered judgments, and entertained his peers. The hall was cavernous, its high ceiling supported by massive oak beams. Tapestries depicting hunting scenes and battles adorned the walls, adding both color and some meager insulation against the perpetual chill. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, though it was currently unlit in the summer heat. At the far end stood Lord William's high table, elevated on a dais above the rest of the room. Lord William himself stood before the table, his tall frame imposing even without his usual finery. At 43, he was still strong and vital, though strands of grey now threaded through his dark beard. Lady Elizabeth sat to his right, her golden hair covered by a silk veil, her face a careful mask of serenity despite the obvious tension in the room. As the last of the Castle's residents filed in, knights, men-at-arms, craftsmen, stable hands, kitchen staff, and various servants, Lord William raised his hand for silence. The murmuring crowd grew still. "My people," he began, his deep voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "I have received grave news. Baron Mortimer S. Men have set fire to our village market. This act of aggression cannot and will not go unanswered." A growl of approval rippled through the assembled knights and men-at-arms. However, Lord William continued, raising his hand again for quiet. "We must proceed with caution. The Sheriff of Hereford arrives tonight to discuss this very matter. Baron Mortimer has laid claim to the eastern pastures, lands that have belonged to Goodrich for generations. He has petitioned the king, claiming ancient rights through his grandmother's lineage." Lady Elizabeth shifted in her seat, her composure slipping momentarily to reveal a flash of anger. "I knew the rumors that eastern pastures had been part of her dowry when she married Lord William 18 years ago. Tonight's feast will proceed as planned," Lord William declared. "We must show strength and prosperity to the sheriff, but all men of fighting age will be on alert. Double the guards on the walls and at the gatehouse." Sir Richard stepped forward. "My lord, should we send riders to the king?" This unprovoked attack, not unprovoked in Mortimer's mind, Lord William interrupted. "And the king is in London, a week's hard ride from here. No, we shall deal with this matter locally first." He turned to Master Cook. "The feast must be exceptional. Our reputation depends on it." Master Cook bowed deeply. "Of course, my lord. But the almonds for the blanc mange, send riders to Hereford, if necessary." Lord William waved dismissively. "Spare no expense. The sheriff must leave here convinced of our rightful claim to the eastern pastures." As the assembly began to disperse, I noticed a figure I had not seen before, young man standing slightly behind Lord William. Tall and lean, with features that marked him clearly as Lord William's son, though I had never seen him before. He must have been away at court or in service to another lord. His gaze swept the crowd, and for a brief moment our eyes met. I quickly looked away, embarrassed to be caught staring. Back in the kitchens, chaos reigned. Master Cook assigned 6 kitchen boys to pluck and prepare 30 chickens, while ordering others to start on pies filled with venison and spices. 2 more riders were dispatched to Hereford for the precious almonds and other rare ingredients. "Margaret, Master," Cook called, "you will serve at the high table tonight. Your quick thinking this morning has earned you that honor." And he lowered his voice. "Lord William may wish to hear your account of what you saw directly. Serve at the high table." My heart raced. Such an assignment was usually reserved for more experienced servants or those of slightly higher birth. I would be in close proximity to not only Lord William and Lady Elizabeth, but also the sheriff and other nobility. As I helped prepare the great hall for the evening's feast, arranging benches and tables, laying out salt cellars and bread trenchers, my mind kept returning to the young man I had seen, Lord William's son. Who was he? Why had I never seen him before, and why had his gaze lingered on me, a simple kitchen servant? The day passed in a blur of activity. The riders returned from Hereford with almonds and other exotic ingredients, just as the sun began to set. Master Cook created miracles in the kitchen despite the morning's setbacks. Platters of roasted meats, steaming pies, fresh bread, and, yes, the coveted blanc mange were prepared with frantic precision. As the time for the feast approached, I was summoned to Lady Elizabeth's chambers. A maidservant handed me a clean tunic and apron. Lady Elizabeth insists all servers at the high table be properly presented, she explained with a sniff, clearly disapproving of my selection for such an honor. The new tunic was of finer wool than I had ever worn, dyed a deep blue that made my eyes appear almost violet in the polished metal mirror I was permitted to glance in. My dark hair was covered with a clean white coif, and for once I looked almost respectable. As the castle bell tolled the hour, I joined the other servants designated to serve the high table. We were instructed on proper etiquette, how to approach from the left, never to speak unless spoken to, how to hold the pitcher when pouring wine. The great hall had been transformed. Dozens of candles illuminated the space, their warm glow softening the harsh stone walls. Fresh rushes mixed with herbs covered the floor, releasing a pleasant aroma when crushed underfoot. The high table was draped with linen, an extravagance reserved for only the most important occasions. The guests began to arrive, first the lesser nobles and knights from neighboring manors, then the more important visitors. Lord William and Lady Elizabeth took their places at the centre of the high table. To Lord William's right sat the Sheriff of Hereford, a corpulent man with shrewd eyes and a calculating smile, and to Lady Elizabeth's left sat the young man I had noticed earlier now, formally dressed in a rich green tunic emblazoned with the Goodrich family crest. As I approached with a pitcher of wine, I heard Lord William introduce him to the gathered guests. "My son, Sir James, has returned from 2 years in service to the Earl of Gloucester. He is now ready to take his place as heir to Goodrich and defender of our lands." Sir James. So that was his name. As I leaned forward to fill his goblet, he looked up. Our eyes met once more, and this time there was clear recognition in his gaze. "You are the girl from the village," he said quietly. "The one who saw Mortimer's men." I nearly dropped the pitcher in surprise. How did he know? I had reported to Sir Richard, not to Lord William directly. "Yes, my lord," I whispered, cursing myself for the tremor in my voice. "We will speak later," he murmured, before turning his attention back to the conversation at the table. My hands shook slightly as I continued my duties. What could Sir James possibly want with me? And why did the prospect of speaking with him fill me with both dread and an inexplicable excitement? The feast progressed with each course more elaborate than the last. The blanc mange, presented on silver platters and garnished with gold leaf, drew appreciative murmurs from the guests. Lord William and the sheriff spoke animatedly, their conversation punctuated by bursts of laughter that seemed forced to my ears. As I refilled goblets and removed empty platters, I caught fragments of conversations that made little sense to me. Talk of alliances, marriage prospects, and land disputes, politics beyond my understanding or station. But one exchange, overheard, as I bent to retrieve a dropped napkin, chilled my blood. "Mortimer will not stop at burning markets," the sheriff said quietly to Lord William. "He has hired mercenaries from across the channel. My sources say they arrive within the fortnight." "Then we must be prepared," Lord William replied, his voice equally low. "The eastern pastures are worth fighting for, but I would rather avoid bloodshed if possible." "There may be another solution," the sheriff suggested, his gaze sliding toward Sir James. "Baron Mortimer has a daughter of marriageable age. Alliances through marriage have resolved more conflicts than swords ever could." Lord William's expression hardened momentarily before he schooled his features back into a pleasant mask. An interesting suggestion, one worthy of consideration. The conversation shifted to safer topics as they became aware of my presence, but the damage was done. I had heard something not meant for servant ears, and, judging by the dark look that crossed Sir James's face, he had heard it too. As the feast concluded and the guests began to retire for the evening, Sir James caught my eye and made a subtle gesture toward a small antechamber off the main hall. My heart thundered in my chest. To meet privately with the Lord's son would be highly improper. If caught, I could lose my position, or worse. And yet, as the great hall emptied and the other servants began clearing the tables, I found myself slipping quietly toward the antechamber, drawn by curiosity and something else I could not name. Little did I know that this simple act would plunge me into a web of intrigue and danger that threatened not just my position, but my very life. The antechamber was small, lit only by a single candle that cast long shadows across the stone walls. Sir James stood by a narrow window, his profile sharp against the night sky. He turned as I entered, his expression unreadable. "Close the door," he said quietly. My heart hammered against my ribs. I should not be here. This was improper, dangerous and, yet I found myself obeying, pushing the heavy wooden door closed. "Behind me, you are Margaret?" he asked. "Yes, my lord." I kept my eyes downcast, as befitted my station. "Look at me when I speak to you," he commanded, though his tone was not unkind. "Tell me exactly what you saw in the village this morning. Every detail." I raised my eyes to his and recounted the events, the smoke rising from the market, Baron Mortimer's men on the road, the words I had overheard. Sir James listened intently, his brow furrowing deeper with each word. "And you are certain they bore Mortimer's crest? The black boar on crimson?" "Yes, my lord. I have seen it before, when Baron Mortimer visited to summers past." He nodded, seeming to reach some decision. "What I am about to tell you must remain between us. Do you understand?" I nodded, though apprehension coiled in my stomach. "The burning of the village was no random act of aggression," Sir James said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It was a message meant specifically for my father and for me." "I do not understand, my lord." Sir James paced the small room, his movements betraying his agitation. "Before I left for Gloucester, I was acquainted with Lady Anne, Baron Mortimer's daughter. We met in secret several times. When Baron Mortimer discovered our meetings, he was furious. He believes I dishonored her. My cheeks flushed at the implication. Court intrigue and noble romances were far removed from my simple life in the kitchens. "Did you?" I began, then stopped, horrified at my presumption. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Did I dishonor her? No. Our meetings were innocent enough walks in the gardens, poetry reading. But her father discovered a letter I had written her, professing feelings that a man in my position should not have harbored for the daughter of my father's rival. And now he seeks revenge by burning our village. The injustice of it made my voice sharper than it should have been when addressing nobility. "Politics and pride make men do terrible things," Sir James replied, seemingly unbothered by my tone. "The sheriff's suggestion of marriage is Baron Mortimer's doing. He hopes to secure the eastern pastures through my marriage to Lady Anne, turning a personal slight into political gain." I remained silent, unsure why he was sharing such matters with me, a kitchen servant. Sir James moved closer, lowering his voice further. "I need someone I can trust, someone inconspicuous who can carry messages. The servants talk freely around you, as do the guards. You can move through the castle without arousing suspicion." "You want me to spy?" I asked, incredulous. "I want you to be observant," he corrected, "to listen and report what you hear." Nothing more. I should have refused immediately. Such involvement in noble affairs could only end badly for someone of my station. And yet, the earnestness in his eyes, the urgency in his voice, found myself nodding slowly. "What would you have me do, my lord?" Relief washed over his features. "For now, simply listen. Pay special attention to conversations between my father and Sir Richard, and watch for any strangers entering the castle, messengers, travelling, merchants, anyone unfamiliar. And how shall I report to you? It would be noticed if we meet like this regularly." Sir James moved to the far corner of the room and pressed his hand against what appeared to be solid stone wall. To my astonishment, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passage. The old castle builders included secret passages between certain rooms, he explained. "This one connects to a storeroom near the kitchens. Few know of its existence. We can meet there when necessary." The revelation of a secret passage, like something from a minstrel's tale, left me momentarily speechless. Castle Goodrich had been my home for nearly 10 years, yet I had never suspected such secrets lay hidden within its walls. "There is one more thing," Sir James said, reaching into his tunic. He withdrew a small object and pressed it into my palm. "Keep this hidden. Show it to no one." I opened my hand to find a small brooch in the shape of a falcon, personal emblem of Sir James, distinct from the family crest. It was finely crafted of silver, worth more than I would earn in years of service. "I cannot accept this, my lord. It is too valuable." "It is not a gift," he clarified. "It is proof of your association with me, should you ever need it. Now go. We have been here too long already." I slipped the brooch into the small pouch I wore tied to my belt, my mind reeling from all that had transpired. As I turned to leave, Sir James caught my arm. "Margaret," he said softly, "what, I ask, puts you at risk? I would understand if you chose to forget this conversation." The warmth of his hand on my arm sent an unfamiliar sensation coursing through me. I met his gaze steadily. "I serve Goodrich Castle and its people, my lord. If Baron Mortimer threatens that, I would be remiss not to help however I can." A smile, genuine this time, transformed his serious face. "I chose well in you, it seems." I hurried back to the great hall, slipping in among the servants cleaning after the feast. No one seemed to have noticed my brief absence. As I gathered dirty trenchers and goblets, my thoughts whirled with all I had learned. Secret passages, noble rivalries, potential marriages, and mercenaries from across the channel. It was like stepping into one of the tales the old castle minstrels sang on winter evenings. And yet this was no tale. The danger was real as the silver falcon brooch now hidden in my pouch, as real as the smoke that had risen from the burning village. I had just entangled myself in matters far above my station, and there would be no going back. Later that night, as I lay on my straw pallet in the small chamber I shared with 3 other kitchen maids, sleep eluded me. The events of the day replayed in my mind: the burning village, the feast, the secret meeting with Sir James. What had I agreed to, and why had he chosen me, of all people? Perhaps it was merely convenience. I had been in the right place at the right time, witnessing Baron Mortimer's men. Or perhaps he had seen something in me that I did not see in myself, capability beyond kneading dough and serving wine. Either way, as the castle bell tolled midnight, and the snores of my fellow servants filled our cramped quarters, I made a silent vow. I would help Sir James protect Castle Goodrich, not just for him, but for all of us who called this cold, draughty, sometimes miserable place home. Little did I know just how soon my vow would be tested, or how dangerous the game I had entered truly was. Dawn arrived with a persistent drizzle that turned the castle courtyard into a muddy quagmire. The rain seemed fitting for my mood, unsettled and grey. Sleep had come fitfully, my dreams filled with burning villages and secret passages that led nowhere. The kitchen was already in its usual state of controlled chaos when I arrived. Master Cook barked orders as servants scurried about, preparing the morning meal. The previous night's feast had depleted our stores considerably, and today would be spent restocking and preparing simpler fare. "Margaret," Master Cook called, his face flushed with exertion, "take this to the guardhouse." He thrust a large pot of pottage into my hands. "The night watch is finishing their duty, and they need feeding." The guardhouse stood near the gatehouse, a squat stone building where off-duty guards ate, slept, and passed time playing dice or swapping tales. I had delivered food there many times before, but today the errand held new significance. Sir James had asked me to listen, to observe, and where better to gather information than among the guards? I navigated the slippery courtyard carefully, the heavy pot straining my arms. The smell of oats, leeks, and salted pork wafted up, making my own stomach growl. We servants would eat later, after our morning duties were complete. The doors stood ajar, voices spilling out into the damp morning air. I paused before entering, adjusting my grip on the pot and straining to hear the conversation within. "Mercenaries, for certain," a gruff voice was saying. "Flemish, by the look of them." "Nasty bunch. How many?" asked another. "These 20 that I saw, probably more in the forest. They recamped beyond the eastern ridge, near the old Roman road." I recognized the first voice as belonging to Edgar, a grizzled veteran who had served Lord William for decades. The second was younger William, called Will, one of the newer recruits. "Does Lord William know?" Will asked. "Sir Richard took the news to him at first light," Edgar replied. "But keep your voice down. No need to start a panic among the castle folk." I chose that moment to enter, pushing the door wide with my hip. "Morning meal," I announced, trying to keep my voice steady and my expression neutral. The guards, 6 in all, having just completed the night watch, looked up with appreciative grins. Edgar, his beard streaked with grey and a scar running from his left eye to his jaw, stepped forward to relieve me of my burden. "Bless you, girl," he said, setting the pot on the central table. "Nothing warms a man after a night on the walls like a hot meal." I busied myself ladling the thick pottage into wooden bowls, mentally noting every detail of the guardhouse and its occupants. Besides Edgar and Will, I recognized Thomas's older brother John, a stocky man named Bart, and two others whose names escaped me. "Nasty weather for May," I commented, keeping my tone conversational as I handed out the bowls. "Makes for difficult conditions on the walls, I imagine." Edgar grunted in agreement, already spooning the hot mixture into his mouth. "Aye, and worse for tracking movements in the forest. Can't ye see a damned thing through this mist?" "Anything interesting happened during your watch?" I asked, feigning casual curiosity. The guards exchanged glances. Edgar's weathered face creased with suspicion. "Since when do kitchen maids care about guard business?" he asked, his tone sharper than before. My heart stuttered. I had been too direct, too obvious in my questioning. "Just making conversation," I said quickly. "The kitchen is dull as dishwater most days." The tension in the room eased slightly. Will laughed. "If you want excitement, Margaret, you should join the guard. Stand in the rain all night, staring into darkness, jumping at every rustle in the forest. Great fun, that." The others chuckled, and I forced a smile, relieved the moment had passed. I finished distributing the food and gathered my empty pot, preparing to leave. "One more thing," Edgar called as I reached the door. "Tell Master Cook the noon meal better be substantial. With what's brewing, we'll need our strength." I nodded, storing away his cryptic comment for later consideration. As I stepped back into the rain, a figure emerged from the shadows beside the guardhouse. Sir Richard, his expression grim. "A word, Margaret," he said, gesturing for me to follow him beneath the shelter of a nearby archway. My pulse quickened. Had he somehow discovered my meeting with Sir James? Or worse, had he been watching me just now, noting my suspicious questions? Once we were out of the rain, Sir Richard studied me with piercing blue eyes. "You were in the village yesterday when Mortimer's men attacked." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "Yes, Sir Richard, and you served at the high table last night, during the feast?" Another nod. "Did you overhear anything unusual during the feast?" Conversations between Lord William and the sheriff, perhaps. The irony of the situation was not lost on me. Here was Sir Richard, asking me to report on conversations I might have overheard, precisely what Sir James had recruited me to do. Whose side was Sir Richard on? And more importantly, whose side should I be on? I chose my words carefully. The sheriff and Lord William spoke of many things. The weather, hunting, their shared youth at court. Nothing about Baron Mortimer or mercenaries. His gaze intensified, scrutinizing my face for any sign of deception. The sheriff mentioned something about Baron Mortimer hiring men from across the channel. I admitted, deciding a partial truth was safer than an outright lie. But I heard little else. It is not my place to listen to the Lord's conversations. Sir Richard nodded slowly, seemingly satisfied. "If you should hear anything that might concern the safety of Castle Goodricher, will come to me immediately. Understood?" "Yes, Sir Richard," I promised, wondering if he'd made such requests of all servants, or if I had drawn special attention somehow. He dismissed me with a wave, and I hurried back toward the kitchen, my mind racing. Sir Richard wanted me to spy for him, just as Sir James did. Both claimed to be concerned with the safety of Castle Goodrich, yet neither seemed willing to share information openly with the other. The politics of nobility were more tangled than I had ever imagined, and I was now caught in the middle of it, all a simple kitchen made with no training in intrigue or deception. Back in the kitchen, I resumed my duties, kneading dough for the day's bread while my thoughts churned like the butter. Eliza was vigorously working nearby. The events of the past day had revealed layers to castle life I had never suspected existed beneath the surface of our daily routines. As midday approached, Lady Elizabeth's personal maid, Matilda, appeared in the kitchen doorway. She was a thin woman with sharp features and sharper eyes, known for her unwavering loyalty to Lady Elizabeth. "You, Margaret," she called, pointing a bony finger in my direction. "Lady Elizabeth requests your presence in her solar immediately." A ripple of surprise passed through the kitchen. Being summoned to Lady Elizabeth's private chambers was unprecedented for someone of my station. Master Cook raised his eyebrows but nodded his permission for me to go. I wiped the flour from my hands and smoothed my apron, conscious of my dishevelled appearance. There was no time to change into cleaner garments. Lady Elizabeth was not known for her patience. Matilda led me through the castle's winding corridors and up a narrow spiral staircase to Lady Elizabeth's solar private chamber, where she spent much of her day engaged in needlework, reading, or managing the domestic affairs of the castle. The solar was unlike any room I had seen in Castle Goodrich. Tapestries covered the cold stone walls, depicting pastoral scenes and mythological tales. Cushioned benches lined the windows, which were fitted with actual glass luxury few could afford. A small brazier warmed the space, dispelling the perpetual chill that pervaded the rest of the castle. Lady Elizabeth sat near the window, illuminated by the grey daylight filtering through the glass. At 38, she remained beautiful, her golden hair only slightly dulled by the passage of time. She looked up from her embroidery as we entered. "Leave us, Matilda," she commanded. The maid curtsied and departed, closing the door behind her. "Come closer, girl," Lady Elizabeth said, setting aside her needlework. I approached and curtsied deeply. "My lady, you are the one who witnessed Baron Mortimer's men burning the village market." Again, not a question, but a statement of fact. "Yes, my lady. And you served at the high table last night, during the feast." I suppressed a sigh. It seemed everyone in the castle was suddenly interested in what I might have overheard. "Yes, my lady." Lady Elizabeth studied me with cool green eyes. "My son spoke with you privately after the feast." My heart froze. So someone had noticed our meeting after all. I opened my mouth to deny it, but Lady Elizabeth raised a hand to silence me. "Do not bother with denials," she said, her voice soft but unyielding. "The castle has eyes everywhere, including ones loyal to me." I swallowed hard, uncertain whether to be more afraid of Sir James's displeasure or Lady Elizabeth's. "My lady, I meant no, what did my son discuss with you?" She interrupted, leaning forward slightly. Truth seemed the safest course, or at least a version of it. "He asked about what I witnessed in the village, my lady. The men with Baron Mortimer's crest. Nothing more." Her gaze was penetrating, as if she could extract the full truth from my mind through will alone. He expressed concern for the safety of the castle, my lady." I kept my eyes downcast, focusing on the intricate pattern of the rug beneath my feet. Lady Elizabeth was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, Her voice had softened further. My son is young and impulsive. He sees dangers where sometimes none exist, and misses threats that stand before his very eyes. She sighed. It is a mother's burden to protect her children, even from themselves. I remained silent, unsure what response was expected of. Look at me, Margaret, she commanded. I raised my eyes to meet hers, surprised that she knew my name. I have watched you these past years, she said. You are intelligent, observant. Unlike most servants, you see beyond your daily tasks. A small smile curved her lips. That is a rare and valuable quality. Thank you, my lady, I murmured, thoroughly confused by the direction of this conversation. I will speak plainly. Lady Elizabeth continued. Castle Goodrich stands at a crossroads. Baron Mortimer's aggression, while troubling, is merely a symptom of larger forces at work. The sheriff's presence, the talk of mercenaries, these are pieces of a game, being played by powers far greater than a minor baron with wounded pride. She rose and moved to a small chest positioned beneath one of the windows. From it, she withdrew a sealed parchment. My brother, the Earl of Pembroke, has sent word that King Henry grows suspicious of the northern lords, including my husband. The burning of our village may have been Mortimer's petty revenge, but it serves another purpose to draw Lord William into a conflict that will appear as defiance of the crown. I struggled to grasp the implications. Politics at this level were far beyond my understanding. Why tell me this, my lady? Because my son has chosen you as his eyes and ears, and I would have you be mine as well. She held out the sealed parchment. Take this to the abbey at Tintern. Give it only to Brother Michael, the herbalist. Tell no one of your errand, not even Sir James. I stared at the parchment, then back at Lady Elizabeth. My lady, I am just a kitchen maid. I cannot leave the castle without permission, and I would surely be missed. That has been arranged, she replied smoothly. Master Cook has been informed that I require your services for a special task that may take several days. As for leaving the castle, she smiled again, this one containing a hint of mischief that transformed her normally regal features. There are ways to depart unseen. With growing unease, I realized that the castle's network of secret passages was perhaps not as secret as Sir James had believed. How many others knew of their existence, and how many other secrets lay buried within these ancient walls? Lady Elizabeth pressed the parchment into my hands. You leave at dusk. Matilda will provide you with a simple travelling dress and cloak. You will find a horse waiting in the old mill beyond the castle's western wall. My lady, I do not know how to ride, I admitted, panic rising within me at the thought of such a journey alone. The horse knows the way to Tintern, she assured me. You need only stay on its back and avoid being seen. She returned to her seat by the window. Now go. Return to your duties as if nothing has changed. I curtsied mechanically, my mind reeling as I tucked the parchment into my pouch alongside Sir James's silver falcon. Lady Elizabeth had already returned to her embroidery, dismissing me as easily as she had summoned me. As I descended the spiral staircase, my thoughts tumbled chaotically. In the span of a single day, I had become entangled in the schemes of Sir James, Sir Richard, and now Lady Elizabeth herself. Each wanted information. Each had secrets they were unwilling to share openly. An Aja simple kitchen maid who, until yesterday, had worried about nothing more serious than scorched bread had somehow become central to it all. The afternoon passed in a blur of routine tasks. I kneaded dough, chopped vegetables, and stirred pots with mechanical precision while my mind grappled with my impossible situation. If I carried Lady Elizabeth's message to Tintern Abbey, I would be unavailable to report to Sir James. If I told Sir James of his mother's request, I would betray her trust. And looming over it all was Sir Richard's command to report anything concerning castle safety directly to him. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, Matilda appeared once more in the kitchen doorway. "Margaret," she called, her voice carrying an undercurrent of authority that silenced the usual kitchen chatter. "Come with me." Master Cook nodded his permission without looking up from the sauce he was carefully seasoning. Whatever arrangement Lady Elizabeth had made with him, it clearly precluded any questions about my unusual comings and goings. Matilda led me not back to Lady Elizabeth's solar, but to a small storeroom near the castle's western wall. Once inside, she closed the door and lit a small lamp, revealing shelves of preserved foods and linens. "Change into these," she instructed, handing me a bundle of clothing. Quickly now. The garments were simple, but of better quality than my own plain brown kirtle, a linen shift, sturdy leather shoes, and a dark green cloak with a deep hood. I changed swiftly, conscious of Matilda's impatient presence. When I had finished, she inspected me critically. "You will pass for a merchantess' daughter or a yeoman's wife," she declared. "The less attention you draw, the better." She moved to the far wall of the storeroom and pressed against a particular stone, just as Sir James had done in the antechamber. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow, dark passage. "This leads beneath the western wall," Matilda explained, handing me the lamp. "Follow it to its end. The old mill lies just beyond. You will find the horse tethered there." "Does Lady Elizabeth wish me to return with a reply?" I asked, still struggling to grasp the reality of the situation. Matilda's thin lips curved in what might have been a smile. "If you return at all, it will be answer enough." With those ominous words, she ushered me into the passage and closed the hidden door behind me. The sound of stone scraping against stone echoed in the narrow confines, and then I was alone in the dim lamplight. The passage was cramped and damp, forcing me to stoop as I made my way forward. The air grew progressively cooler and damper, suggesting I was now beneath the level of the castle proper. Water dripped from the ceiling, and more than once I startled at the scurrying of small creatures in the darkness beyond my lamp's feeble glow. After what seemed an eternity, but was likely no more than 10 minutes, the passage began to slope upward. Eventually, I reached another stone door, this one operated by a simple iron lever. It opened with a reluctant groan, revealing the twilight sky and the overgrown ruins of the old mill. The structure had been abandoned years before when the new mill was built closer to the village. Its wooden upper stories had long since collapsed, but the stone foundation remained, partially concealed by vegetation. Tethered to a stunted tree beside the ruins was a horse, not the magnificent destrier that knights rode into battle, but a sturdy, placid-looking palfrey suited for travel. The horse regarded me with mild interest as I approached cautiously. I had never ridden before, having no cause to do so in my role as a kitchen servant. The beast seemed enormous up close, its back impossibly high off the ground. "Good horse," I murmured, reaching out a tentative hand to stroke its neck. The horse snorted but remained still, apparently accustomed to nervous riders. A simple saddle was strapped to the animal's back, with a small pack attached behind it. Investigation revealed the pack contained bread, cheese, dried meat, and a small waterskin provisions for my journey. With considerable difficulty and no small amount of undignified scrambling, I managed to haul myself onto the saddle. The horse shifted beneath me, but thankfully did not bolt at my clumsiness. As the last light of day faded from the sky, I gathered the reins, as I had seen the knights do, and gently pressed my heels into the horse's sides. The animal moved forward obediently, picking its way through the ruins toward a faint path that led into the forest beyond. To Tintern Abbey, I whispered, more to myself than to the horse. In truth, I had only the vaguest idea of where the abbey lay, somewhere to the west, perhaps a day's ride. I would have to trust in Lady Elizabeth's assurance that the horse knew the way. As Castle Goodrich disappeared behind me, swallowed by the gathering darkness and the trees, a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration filled my chest. For 15 years, the castle had been my entire world. Now I was venturing beyond its walls, carrying secrets that could determine the fate of all who dwelt there. I clutched Lady Elizabeth's sealed parchment through the fabric of my pouch, feeling the outline of Sir James's silver falcon beneath it. Whatever game of power and politics was being played by the nobility, I was now irrevocably part of it. And as the forest closed around me and the first stars appeared in the sky above, I could not shake the feeling that my life as a simple kitchen maid was over forever. The forest at night was a realm of shadows and whispers. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting dappled patterns on the narrow path before me. My horse plodded steadily onward, seemingly untroubled by the darkness that had my heart racing. At every rustling leaf and snapping twig, I had never been beyond the immediate vicinity of Castle Goodrich. The forest had always been a mysterious boundary, visible from the castle walls, but never explored. Now I was immersed in it, surrounded by ancient oaks and elms, whose gnarled branches formed twisted silhouettes against the night sky. The rhythmic movement of the horse beneath me gradually calmed my initial panic. I began to notice the subtle beauty of the nighttime forest, the soft hooting of owls, the occasional glimpse of a fox or deer moving silently between the trees. The sweet scent of wild honeysuckle carried on the gentle breeze. As we travelled, I attempted to organize my thoughts, to make sense of the tangled web in which I had become ensnared. Why had Lady Elizabeth sent me on this mysterious errand? Why not dispatch one of the castle's regular messengers, or even Matilda, whose loyalty was beyond question? And what could be so important in her message to Brother Michael that it warranted such secrecy? Then there was Sir James, who believed I was his secret ally within the castle. What would he think when he discovered I was gone? Would he assume I had betrayed him, abandoned our arrangement? And Sir Richard, who had commanded me to report anything concerning castle safety directly to him. Lady Elizabeth's clandestine communication with Tintern Abbey qualified. Yet here I was, riding through the night forest, serving Lady Elizabeth's purpose, while potentially undermining both her son and the castle's master-at-arms. The complexity of noble politics was dizzying. The night grew deeper. My eyes grew heavy, despite the discomfort of the saddle and the strangeness of my situation. I found myself nodding off, jolting awake only when I began to slip from the horse's back. Just as I feared I could not stay awake a moment longer, the forest thinned, revealing a wide clearing bathed in moonlight. At its center stood a small, abandoned woodcutter's hut, its thatched roof partially collapsed but its stone walls still intact. My horse turned toward it without prompting, coming to a stop beside the weathered wooden door. Apparently, this was to be my shelter for the night. I dismounted awkwardly, my legs cramping from hours in the unaccustomed position. The horse waited patiently as I hobbled to the door and pushed it open, revealing a simple one-room dwelling. The interior was dusty but surprisingly intact. A crude hearth occupied one wall, and a rough wooden platform that might charitably be called a bed stood. In one corner, there was even a small stack of firewood beside the hearth, left by the previous occupant, or perhaps maintained by other travelers who used this place as a waypoint. I tethered the horse to a post outside where it could graze on the clearing's thick grass, then set about making the hut habitable for the night. Years of tending fires in Castle Goodrich's kitchens made the task of lighting the hearth simple enough, and soon a small, cheerful blaze pushed back the chill and illuminated the humble space. I checked Lady Elizabeth's parchment and Sir James's silver falcon, reassuring myself that both remained secure in my pouch. Then I spread my cloak on the wooden platform and ate a small portion of the provisions from the saddlebag. As I lay down to sleep, watching the fire's dying embers cast dancing shadows on the walls, I found myself wondering about the person I had been just 2 days ago, simple kitchen maid whose greatest concern had been Master Cook's temper. That Margaret seemed a stranger to me now, innocent and unknowing of the currents of power and intrigue that flowed beneath the surface of castle life. Sleep claimed me eventually, deep and dreamless despite my circumstances. When I awoke, sunlight was streaming through the hut's single window, and birds were singing in the surrounding forest. For a disorienting moment, I thought myself back in the servantess' quarters at Castle Goodrich, before reality rushed back. I rose quickly, rebuilding the fire to take the morning chill from the air and consuming another portion of my provisions. The horse was where I had left it, contentedly grazing on the lush grass of the clearing. Within the hour, we were on our way again. The forest seemed entirely different by daylight, less menacing, more vibrant with life and color. Wildflowers dotted the forest floor, and squirrels chattered indignantly as we passed beneath their trees. The path widened gradually, suggesting we were approaching more traveled routes. By midday, we emerged from the forest entirely onto a broad dirt road that wound through rolling hills dotted with sheep. In the distance, the silver ribbon of a river glinted in the sunlight. The sight of other travelers' merchants with carts, pilgrims on foot. A knight and his squire was both reassuring and no. I kept my hood drawn forward, hiding my face in its shadow, and avoided eye contact. Lady Elizabeth had said I might pass for a merchantess' daughter or yeoman's wife, but I felt woefully conspicuous, certain that anyone who looked closely would immediately recognize me as a servant far from her proper place. Yet no one paid me any particular attention. I was simply another traveler on the road, unremarkable and unworthy of notice. The realization was oddly liberating. As afternoon waned, the river drew closer, and with it, the first glimpse of my destination. Tintern Abbey rose from the valley floor, its stone walls glowing golden in the late sunlight. Even at a distance, the abbey was impressive, complex, of buildings dominated by a great church with soaring windows and graceful flying buttresses. I had heard of such places, of course. Castle Goodrich had its chapel, where we attended Mass on Sundays and holy days, but it was a modest structure compared to the magnificence now before me. The abbey church must have been nearly the size of the castle's great hall, a testament to the wealth and power of the Cistercian order that had built it. As I approached the abbey's outer gate, a sense of trepidation replaced my initial awe. How was I to find Brother Michael without arousing suspicion? What reason could I give for my presence that would not invite uncomfortable questions? The problem resolved itself more easily than I had anticipated. A lay brother stationed at the gate greeted me with a benevolent smile. "Welcome, daughter," he said. "Do you seek lodging for the night, or have you come on other business?" "I seek Brother Michael, the herbalist," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I bring a message from Lady Elizabeth of Goodrich Castle." The lay brother nodded, unsurprised. "Brother Michael attends to his garden at this hour. I will show you the way." He led me through the outer courtyard, past stables and workshops, where lay brothers and servants went about their daily tasks. The abbey was a world unto itself, as busy and organized as Castle Goodrich, but with a pervasive sense of peace that was entirely foreign to me. Brother Michael's herb garden lay behind the infirmary, a neatly arranged series of beds containing plants both familiar and strange. The herbalist himself was a stooped figure with a fringe of white hair surrounding a bald pate, his hands stained green from his work. Brother Michael, my guide, called, a messenger from Lady Elizabeth of Goodrich. The old monk straightened with visible effort, squinting at me with rheumy eyes. "Ah, yes, thank you, Brother Thomas. You may leave us." When we were alone, Brother Michael beckoned me closer. "You are not Lady Elizabeth's usual messenger," he observed, his voice reedy but sharp with intelligence. "No, brother," I agreed, reaching into my pouch for the sealed parchment. "I am ... new to this duty." He accepted the parchment, with dirt-stained fingers, breaking the seal and reading its contents with surprising quickness for one of his apparent age. His expression revealed nothing. "Come," he said when he had finished. "We must speak privately." He led me to a small chamber adjoining the herb garden, a workspace filled with drying plants, clay pots, and various implements for grinding and mixing. The air was thick with the mingled scents of dozens of herbs. Brother Michael closed the door and turned to study me more carefully. "Your name, child?" "Margaret, brother, and you serve in the kitchens at Castle Goodrich." I blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" A smile creased his weathered face. "Your hands," he gestured to my flower-roughened palms and fingers. "They tell the tale of your labors as clearly as any proclamation." I tucked my hands into the folds of my cloak. Suddenly, "There is no shame in honest work," Brother Michael said gently. "Our Lord himself was a carpenter before he was a preacher." He moved to a cluttered workbench and cleared a space, spreading Lady Elizabeth's parchment upon it. "Do you know what this contains?" he asked, watching me closely. "No, brother. I was only told to deliver it to you alone." He nodded, apparently satisfied with my answer. "Lady Elizabeth writes that Baron Mortimer's men burned the village market, and that mercenaries have been seen in the forests around Goodrich. She fears for the safety of the castle and its people." This was hardly news to me, having witnessed the burning myself and overheard talk of mercenaries both in the guardhouse and during the feast. Why would Lady Elizabeth need to communicate such information to a monk in turn? Brother Michael seemed to read the question in my expression. "What do you know of the relationship between Tintern Abbey and Castle Goodrich?" he asked. "Nothing, brother," I admitted. "I know only that the abbey lies to the west of the castle, perhaps a day's ride. Tintern Abbey was founded by Walter de Clare, Lord of Chepstow, in 1131, Brother Michael explained, his tone taking on the cadence of a teacher. The de Clare family's lands bordered those of Goodrich. Over the centuries, marriages and alliances have bound the two houses together in ways not recorded in official histories. He tapped Lady Elizabeth's parchment. "Lady Elizabeth was born a Declar, Her marriage to Lord William united two powerful families, but it also placed her in a difficult position when conflicts arise between them. I struggled to follow the historical connections. But what has this to do with Baron Mortimer and his mercenaries? Baron Mortimer is merely a tool, Brother Michael said dismissively. The hand that guides him belongs to the Earl of Gloucester, the current head of the de Clare family and Lady Elizabeth's cousin. The Earl covets the eastern pastures, not for their practical value, but because they contain something far more precious. He reached beneath his workbench and withdrew a small wooden box, its surface carved with intricate patterns. From it he produced a piece of parchment, yellowed with age, carefully unfolding it to reveal a crude map. Nearly 2 centuries ago, a party of crusaders returned from the Holy Land, he said, his voice dropping to little more than a whisper despite our privacy. They brought with them an object of immense value, spiritual rather than monetary. Fearing it would be seized by the crown, they concealed it on lands that would eventually become part of Lady Elizabeth's dowry. I stared at the ancient map, trying to make sense of its faded markings. What was this object? Brother Michael shook his head. That knowledge is shared only with those who need to know. Suffice it to say, it is something many would kill to possess, believing it grants spiritual authority or even miraculous powers. He carefully refolded the ancient map and returned it to its box. The Earl of Gloucester has learned of its existence from family records long thought lost. He uses Baron Mortimer as his proxy, encouraging him to claim the eastern pastures through marriage or force. And Sir James, I asked, remembering his account of his relationship with Lady Anne, where does he fit in this scheme? Brother Michael's bushy eyebrows rose. You know of Sir James's involvement. Lady Elizabeth did not mention that in her message. I cursed my loose tongue, but it was too late to retract the question. Sir James spoke briefly of Lady Anne, Baron Mortimer's daughter. He said there, friendship had angered the Baron. Did he indeed? The old monk's eyes twinkled with unexpected amusement. The young are ever indiscreet in matters of the heart. But yes, Sir James unwittingly complicated matters by developing an attachment to Lady Anne. What began as a political maneuver by Baron Mortimer, encouraging his daughter to charm information from Lord William's heir, became something neither family anticipated. They fell in love, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Brother Michael regarded me curiously. Perhaps they were simply two young people rebelling against their family's expectations. Either way, their dalliance has added personal animosity to what was already a dangerous situation. He turned away, moving to a shelf lined with clay pots and glass vials. Lady Elizabeth asks that I prepare certain medicines for Castle Goodrich for wounds, fever, and other ailments that might be needed should conflict arise. She expects fighting, then, I said, my stomach knotting at the thought of Castle Goodrich under siege. She is prudent to prepare for all possibilities. Brother Michael replied, selecting various containers and placing them in a small wooden chest. You will carry these back to her, along with my written response to her message. As he gathered the medicines, I considered all I had learned. The burning of the village market, Baron Mortimer's aggression, the mercenaries in the forest stall, were part of a larger scheme orchestrated by the Earl of Gloucester to obtain some ancient religious relic hidden within Castle Goodrich's lands. Sir James and Lady Anne's relationship had merely added personal grievance to an already volatile situation, and I, a kitchen maid who had never before set foot outside the castle, was now entangled in this web of family rivalries, hidden treasures, and potential violence. You seem troubled, child, Brother Michael observed, pausing in his work. I am overwhelmed, I admitted. 2 days ago, my greatest concern was whether the bread would rise properly. Now I carry secret messages between nobility and monks, speak of mercenaries and hidden treasures, and fear for the safety of all I know. The old monk nodded sympathetically. The transition from innocence to understanding is rarely gentle. But consider this, lady. Elizabeth chose you for this task, not a regular messenger or trusted servant. Why do you think that might be? I had pondered this question throughout my journey, but had found no satisfactory answer. I do not know. Perhaps because you are unexpected, Brother Michael suggested. A kitchen maid on a secret mission arouses less suspicion than a known messenger. Or perhaps she saw in you qualities that others have overlooked: intelligence, courage, discretion. He regarded me thoughtfully. Or perhaps God's hand guides events in ways we cannot comprehend. The humble are often called to great purpose. In his plan, I was not entirely convinced by his theological explanation, but I appreciated his attempt to ease my anxiety. What happens now, brother? Now you rest, he said firmly. You will spend the night in our guest quarters, and tomorrow at first light, you will return to Castle Goodrich with my medicines and message. Brother Michael summoned a lay brother to show me to the women's guest house, a simple but clean building separated from the main abbey complex. I was provided with a small private cell containing a straw pallet far more comfortable than my sleeping arrangements at the castle, fresh water for washing, and a plain but hearty meal of bread, cheese, and vegetable pot. As I lay on the unfamiliar pallet that night, listening to the distant chanting of monks at their evening prayers, I reflected on how dramatically my life had changed in the span of just 2 days. I had witnessed violence, become privy to noble secrets, ridden alone through forests, and carried messages that might determine the fate of Castle Goodrich and all who dwelled there. Whatever innocence I had possessed as a simple kitchen maid was gone, replaced by a keen awareness of the complex, often dangerous world that existed beyond the castle walls. I could never return to my former ignorance, even if I wished to, and, strangely, I found that I did not wish it. Despite the fear and uncertainty, despite the weight of responsibility now resting on my shoulders, I felt more alive than I had ever been, more present in my own life rather than merely existing on its periphery. With that realization came resolve. I would return to Castle Goodrich tomorrow, deliver Brother Michael's medicines and message to Lady Elizabeth, and face whatever consequences awaited me from Sir James, from Sir Richard, from anyone who might question my absence or my newfound knowledge. I drifted into sleep with the silver falcon brooch clutched in my palm, a tangible reminder of the trust that had been placed in me, however unwisely or unexpectedly. The return journey began in the soft light of dawn. Brother Michael met me at the abbey gate, providing a small chest of medicines and a sealed parchment for Lady Elizabeth. My horse, rested and fed, seemed eager to be underway. God go with you, Margaret, the old monk said, making the sign of the cross over me. Remember, knowledge is a burden, but also a gift. Use it wisely. With those cryptic words of farewell, I began the journey back to Castle Goodrich. The road seemed less intimidating now that I had travelled it once, the forest less mysterious, the distance less daunting. I rode with greater confidence, my body having adjusted somewhat to the unfamiliar motion of horseback. By midday, I had reached the abandoned woodcutter's hut where I had spent my first night. I paused there briefly to rest the horse and eat a small portion of the provisions the abbey had provided. As I prepared to continue, however, a distant sound caught my attention, the muffled thunder of hoofbeats approaching rapidly from the direction of Tintern. Alarm seized me. Was I being followed? Had someone at the abbey betrayed my presence to the Earl of Gloucester's men? Or was it merely coincidence to the travellers on the same road? Taking no chances, I led my horse into the dense forest beside the path, concealing us behind a thicket of hawthorn. From this vantage point, I could observe the path without being seen. The riders appeared minutes later, for men in chainmail, their surcoats bearing the black boar on crimson of Baron Mortimer. They rode hard, with purpose, barely glancing at the woodcutter's hut as they passed. My heart hammered against my ribs. Were they bound for Castle Goodrich? Had hostilities already begun? I needed to reach the castle before them, to warn Lady Elizabeth and deliver Brother Michael's message. But how? The riders were mounted on war horses, bred for speed and endurance. My placid palfrey could never outpace them on the main road. Then I remembered Lady Elizabeth's words. The horse knows the way to Tintern. If there was a direct route from the castle to the abbey, perhaps there was also a short-cut back path known only to those who regularly travelled between the two places. I guided my horse deeper into the forest, away from the main path. The animal seemed hesitant at first, but as we moved farther from the established trail, it grew more confident, choosing its way through the trees with what appeared to be recognition. The forest grew denser, the way more difficult, but my horse navigated the unmarked path with surprising surety. We crossed streams, climbed steep hillsides, and wound through narrow valleys untouched by human traffic. Hours passed. The sun climbed to its zenith and began its slow descent toward the western horizon. My body ached from the unaccustomed riding, and anxiety gnawed at my composure. Had I made a terrible mistake, trusting the horse to find its way? Were we hopelessly lost in the vast forest? Just as despair began to overshadow hope, the trees thinned, revealing a familiar silhouette against the evening sky. Castle Goodrich, its towers and battlements outlined by the setting sun. We had emerged from the forest well to the west of the main road, near the abandoned mill where my journey had begun. Relief flooded through me, so intense it brought tears to my eyes. As the first approached the mill, however, caution reasserted itself. Baron Mortimer's riders might have reached the castle before me. The situation might have changed in my absence. I could not simply ride up to the main gate and announce my return. I dismounted near the mill, tethering the horse where it could graze out of sight, with Brother Michael's chest of medicines and message secure in my arms. I made my way to the hidden entrance I had used to depart. The stone door opened with the same reluctant groan as before, revealing the dark passage beneath the castle wall. I had no lamp this time, forcing me to navigate the cramped tunnel by touch alone. One hand on the damp wall, the other clutching the precious cargo entrusted to me. The journey through darkness seemed interminable, but eventually I reached the storeroom door. I pressed against it gently, fearing it might be locked from the other side, or, worse, that someone might be in the storeroom when I emerged. To my relief, the door swung open silently, revealing the storeroom exactly as I had left it, dark and unoccupied. I closed the hidden door behind me and paused, listening intently for any sound that might indicate danger. The castle seemed unusually quiet. No sounds of combat, no shouts of alarm, no running footsteps that would suggest an attack. Whatever Baron Mortimer's riders had come for, It apparently had not yet resulted in open conflict. I crept from the storeroom into the corridor beyond, intending to make my way directly to Lady Elizabeth's solar. As I turned a corner, however, I collided bodily with a solid figure. Strong hands gripped my shoulders, steadying me before I could fall. I looked up into the stern face of Sir Richard, the Castle's master-at-arms. "Margaret," he said, his voice a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "Where have you been? The entire castle has been searching for you since yesterday." Before I could formulate a response, another figure stepped from the shadows behind Sir James, his expression unreadable in the dim light of the corridor. "I believe," he said coldly, "that Margaret has some explaining to do." Sir Richard's grip on my shoulders tightened. "Where have you been, girl, and what are you carrying?" I clutched Brother Michael's wooden chest more firmly against my body, frantically trying to decide how much to reveal and to whom. Sir Richard had asked me to report anything concerning castle safety, but he had not mentioned any connection to Lady Elizabeth. Sir James had recruited me as his eyes and ears, unaware that his mother had also enlisted my services. Both men stared at me expectantly, the silence stretching between us like a drawn bowstring. "I was sent on an errand," I said finally, choosing words that were true but deliberately vague. "By whom?" Sir James demanded, stepping closer. His gaze fell to the wooden chest in my arms, then to my travel-stained clothing. "You left the castle without permission, without a word to anyone." The accusation in his tone stung, though I knew it was justified. I had accepted his silver falcon, agreeing to be his ally, only to disappear the very next day. Before I could respond, the corridor brightened as Matilda appeared with a lamp. "There you are," she said, addressing me with apparent relief. "Lady Elizabeth has been most concerned." Her timely arrival was clearly no coincidence. She had probably been watching for my return through the secret passage. Her presence shifted the dynamic in the narrow corridor, providing me with a potential escape from the increasingly tense confrontation. "I must deliver this to Lady Elizabeth immediately," I said, indicating the chest. Sir Richard's eyes narrowed. "You were sent on an errand by Lady Elizabeth, without informing Lord William or myself." "My wife's errands are her own business," came a deep voice from behind us. We all turned to see Lord William himself approaching, his tall frame dominating the corridor. His expression was inscrutable, his tone measured. "Sir Richard, I believe the Eastern Watchtower requires your attention. Sir James, you are needed in the armory. The weapons you requested from Hereford have arrived." Both men hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave without answers to their questions. But Lord William's authority was absolute within the walls of Castle Goodrich. With visible frustration, Sir Richard released my shoulders and strode away. Sir James lingered a moment longer, his gaze meeting mine with an intensity that spoke of unfinished business, before he too departed. When they were gone, Lord William turned his attention to me. Up close, the lord of the castle was even more imposing, broad-shouldered, despite his 43 years, with a neatly trimmed beard, now more grey than black, and piercing blue eyes that seemed to evaluate my worth with a single glance. "You have returned safely," he observed. "Good. My wife awaits you in her solar." With that, he continued down the corridor, leaving me standing with Matilda. I realized I had been holding my breath and exhaled slowly. "Come," Matilda said briskly. "Lady Elizabeth will want her medicines, and Brother Michael's reply." I followed her through the castle, trying to process what had just occurred. Lord William knew of his wife's secret communication with Tintern Abbey. He had intervened to prevent Sir Richard and Sir James from questioning me further. What did that mean for the complex web of allegiances and secrets in which I had become entangled? Lady Elizabeth's solar was illuminated by numerous candles when we arrived, pushing back the gathering darkness of evening. She sat in her accustomed place by the window, though there was nothing to see now but her own reflection in the glass. She turned as we entered, her serene expression betraying only the slightest relief at my appearance. "You may leave us, Matilda," she said, rising from her seat. When the door closed behind her maid, Lady Elizabeth approached me, taking the wooden chest from my arms and placing it on a nearby table. "You encountered difficulties on your return journey," she stated, noting my dishevelled appearance. "Baron Mortimer's men were on the road from Tintern," I explained, "for riders bearing his crest. I took a forest path to avoid them." She nodded, unsurprised. "They arrived at our gate this afternoon, bearing a message from their lord. Baron Mortimer requests the honour of a hunt in the eastern forest, with Lord William as his host." A subtle smile curved her lips, a transparent pretext to survey the pastures he covets. Lady Elizabeth opened the chest, examining the medicines Brother Michael had prepared. "Did Brother Michael explain the situation to you?" He spoke of a valuable object hidden in the eastern pastures, I said carefully. "An object brought back from the Crusades, which the Earl of Gloucester now seeks." "The old monk has become loose-lipped in his dotage," she remarked, though her tone held no real censure. "But yes, that is the essence of the matter. The eastern pastures are valuable not for their grass or water, but for what lies beneath them." She removed Brother Michael's sealed parchment from the chest and broke it open, scanning its contents quickly. "Did you read this?" "No, my lady," I answered truthfully. "Brother Michael confirms what we feared. The Earl of Gloucester has been in direct communication with the King, suggesting that Lord William is harbouring treasonous sentiments. The Earl hopes to turn the crown against us, making it easier to seize what he desires with royal blessing." Lady Elizabeth refolded the parchment and moved to the fireplace, tossing it into the flames where it curled and blackened. "Knowledge is dangerous, Margaret, remember that." A knock at the door interrupted us. At Lady Elizabeth's command to enter, Lord William himself stepped into the solar. He glanced at me, then at his wife. "She should go," he said simply. Lady Elizabeth shook her head. "She has proven herself trustworthy, and she is already involved more deeply than either of us intended." Lord William frowned but did not press the issue. "Baron Mortimer's men bring more than an invitation to hunt. They carry an ultimatum. Either we cede the eastern pastures willingly, or Mortimer will take them by force with the Earl of Gloucester's backing and, he claims, the Crown's approval." "And your response?" Lady Elizabeth asked, her composure perfect despite the gravity of the situation. "I have invited Baron Mortimer himself to Goodrich to discuss the matter face to face. He will arrive within 3 days. Lady Elizabeth's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of her surprise. "You invite our enemy inside our walls. Better to negotiate from a position of strength than to appear fearful," Lord William replied. "Besides, I have taken precautions. Sir Richard has doubled the guards. The castle stores are being inventoried and supplemented, and I have sent riders to our allies, requesting aid should negotiations fail." He turned his attention to me. "You have served my wife well, but now you must return to your proper duties. The castle will soon be filled with guests, both welcome and unwelcome. Every servant will be needed at their post. I curtsied deeply. Yes, my lord. As I turned to leave, Lady Elizabeth spoke once more. Margaret, remember what Brother Michael gave you. Keep it safe. I nodded, my hand instinctively moving to the pouch where Sir James's silver falcon still rested. I had not mentioned this token to Lady Elizabeth or Brother Michael. Some instinct had kept me from revealing this particular connection to Sir James. Back in the kitchens, my return was met with a mixture of curiosity and relief. Master Cook merely grunted that I had better make up for lost time, assigning me immediately to kneading dough for the next day's bread. Eliza and the other kitchen maids peppered me with questions about my mysterious absence, which I deflected with vague references to special tasks for Lady Elizabeth. As I worked the dough with practiced movements, I tried to assimilate all I had learned. Castle Goodrich stood on the precipice of conflict. Baron Mortimer, backed by the Earl of Gloucester, coveted the eastern pastures not for their practical value but for some ancient religious relic hidden beneath them. The Earl had poisoned the King's ear against Lord William, potentially turning the crown itself into an enemy. And Arger kitchen maid, who had never aspired to anything beyond perhaps becoming a cook as assistant, had somehow become entwined in these high matters of nobility, politics, and hidden treasures. The next 3 days passed in a blur of intense activity. The entire castle was cleaned from battlements to cellars. Every available space was prepared to accommodate Baron Mortimer's retinue. Additional food was procured, prepared, and stored. Weapons were checked, repaired, and strategically placed throughout the castle ostensibly for hunting, but positioned where they could be quickly seized if needed for defense. I returned to my usual routine, rising before dawn to help prepare the morning meal, spending the day at various kitchen tasks, and collapsing onto my straw pallet each night, exhausted. But beneath this appearance of normality, everything had changed. I now viewed the castle and its inhabitants through different eyes. I noticed the tension in Sir Richard's posture as he drilled the guards in the practice yard. I saw the worry beneath Lady Elizabeth's serene exterior when she visited the kitchens to review the menus for Baron Mortimer's visit. I felt the weight of significance in conversations that fell silent when servants entered a room. Most of all, I was acutely aware of Sir James's gaze whenever our paths crossed. He made no attempt to speak with me privately, but his eyes followed me with a mixture of suspicion and something else I could not identify. I still wore his silver falcon, hidden in my pouch. I had not reported to him as promised. Whatever trust had begun to form between us was now fractured, perhaps irreparably. On the morning of Baron Mortimer's expected arrival, I was assigned to help prepare the great hall. The massive trestle tables were arranged in a U-shape with the high table, on its raised dais forming the base. Fresh rushes mixed with herbs were spread across the floor. The best linens were laid out, along with the castle's finest silver and pewter. As I worked, Sir James entered the hall, surveying the preparations. His gaze found me immediately, and after a moment's hesitation, he approached. "A word, Margaret," he said quietly. I followed him to a window embrasure where we could speak without being overheard. He wasted no time on pleasantries. "You disappeared the day after I entrusted you with my token," he said, his voice low and controlled. "Then you returned, clearly having travelled some distance, carrying medicines and messages for my mother. Explain yourself." The directness of his demand caught me off guard. I had prepared various half-truths and evasions, but faced with his evident sense of betrayal, I found myself unwilling to compound the deception. "Your mother sent me to Tintern Abbey," I admitted. "To Brother Michael, the herbalist, I carried a message from her and returned with medicines," and his reply. Sir James's expression tightened. "And you did not think to inform me before leaving?" "After accepting my token and agreeing to be my eyes and ears within the castle, there was no time," I said, which was true enough. Lady Elizabeth's instructions were to leave immediately and tell no one. "No one, including me," he concluded, his tone bitter. "I see where your true loyalty lies." "My loyalty is to Castle Goodrich and its people," I said, echoing the words I had spoken to him in the antechamber just days before. "I serve that loyalty as best I can, whether by carrying messages for your mother or by reporting to you what I observe among the servants and guards." Sir James studied me for a long moment, weighing my words. "What did my mother send you to Brother Michael for? What message was so urgent it could not wait for a regular messenger?" I hesitated. Lady Elizabeth had burned Brother Michael's reply after reading it, clearly intending its contents to remain secret, but Sir James was her son, the heir to Goodrich, and he had trusted me with his own confidences. She sought confirmation of the Earl of Gloucester's involvement in Baron Mortimer's claim to the eastern pastures, I said carefully, and warning of any communication between the Earl and the King that might threaten Lord William's position. Sir James's eyes widened slightly. "And did Brother Michael provide such confirmation?" "Yes. The Earl has suggested to the King that your father harbours treasonous sentiments. He seeks to turn the crown against Castle Goodrich, to make it easier to seize what he truly desires." "The relic," Sir James murmured, almost to himself. I nodded, unsurprised that he knew of it. "Baron Mortimer is merely the Earl's instrument in this matter, as is his daughter," Sir James added, his expression darkening. "Lady Anne's interest in me was no accident, it seems. Another of her father's tools, deployed at the Earl's direction." The bitterness in his voice suggested his feelings for Lady Anne had been genuine, at least on his part. I felt an unexpected pang of sympathy for him. "Perhaps not entirely," I offered. "Brother Michael suggested that what began as political manoeuvring might have developed into something neither family anticipated." A shadow of a smile touched Sir James's lips. The old monk always was perceptive. The smile faded quickly, but it changes nothing. "Baron Mortimer arrives today with his retinue, including Lady Anne, no doubt, and behind his demands for the eastern pastures lies the Earl of Gloucester's desire for the relic and potentially the crown's displeasure." He straightened, his momentary vulnerability replaced by the bearing expected of Lord William's heir. "We must be prepared for treachery. Baron Mortimer comes ostensibly to negotiate, but he may have other plans." "What can I do?" I asked, surprised by my own eagerness to help. Sir James considered me thoughtfully. "Continue as you have been, observe and listen. The servants will hear things the noble visitors would never say in front of Lord William or myself. Pay particular attention to any mention of additional men in the forest or unusual movements around the castle." I nodded, accepting the charge. "And Margaret," he added, his voice softening slightly, "keep my token close. If trouble comes, show it to any of my personal guards. They will know to protect you." With that, he left me to my duties, striding from the great hall with purpose in his step. I watched him go, aware that despite the breach of trust between us, a new understanding had formed, one based not on blind loyalty but on a shared commitment to protecting Castle Goodrich and its people. Baron Mortimer arrived at midday, riding through the gatehouse at the head of an impressive retinue, 20 men-at-arms, several servants, and 3 nobles, including, as Sir James had predicted, Lady Anne herself. I glimpsed them from a kitchen window as they entered the courtyard. Baron Mortimer was a barrel-chested man in his 50s, his dark beard streaked with grey, his bearing that of one accustomed to command. Lady Anne rode beside him, slender and graceful atop a white palfrey. Even from a distance, her beauty was evident: pale skin, auburn hair, partially visible beneath a silk veil, and delicate features composed in an expression of serene dignity. Watching her, I could understand Sir James's attraction. Lady Anne embodied all the refinement and elegance to which a noble woman aspired. The contrast between her world and mine, between her silk and my rough wool, her careful education and my practical knowledge of kitchens and cooking fires, could not have been more stark. The great feast welcoming Baron Mortimer to Castle Goodrich that evening was a masterpiece of culinary achievement and political theatre. Lord William and Lady Elizabeth played the gracious hosts, Baron Mortimer the appreciative guest. Beneath the surface cordiality, however, tension crackled like lightning before a storm. I had been assigned to serve at the high table again, providing ample opportunity to observe the key players in the unfolding drama. Lord William dominated one end of the table, Baron Mortimer the other. Between them sat Lady Elizabeth, Sir James, Lady Anne, and the Sheriff of Hereford, who had arrived that afternoon to witness the negotiations. As I filled wine goblets and removed empty platters, I watched the subtle interplay between them all. Lord William and Baron Mortimer maintained a facade of respectful disagreement over the eastern pastures, each claiming ancestral rights to the disputed land. Lady Elizabeth interjected occasional comments designed to ease tensions and redirect conversations to safer topics. The sheriff observed it all with the calculating eye of one whose loyalty ultimately lay with the crown rather than any local lord. Most interesting, however, was the interaction between Sir James and Lady Anne. They sat beside each other, yet seemed to occupy different worlds. Their conversation, when required by etiquette, was stiffly polite. No casual observer would have guessed they had once shared clandestine meetings and exchanged passionate letters. Yet twice I noticed their hands touch briefly beneath the table, hidden from the view of others. And once, when Baron Mortimer was engrossed in conversation with Lord William, Lady Anne whispered something to Sir James that brought a fleeting smile to his otherwise guarded expression. Whatever had existed between them was not entirely extinguished, despite the political machinations that had brought them to this moment. The feast concluded with a performance by Castle Goodrich, minstrel songs of chivalry and courtly love that seemed almost mockingly inappropriate given the undercurrents of tension and potential violence that flowed beneath the evening's apparent civility. As the noble guests retired for the night, each escorted 2 chambers prepared with the finest furnishings the castle could provide. I returned to the kitchens to help clean up after the feast. The work continued late into the night, with servants moving quietly through the great hall, removing evidence of the elaborate meal. I was gathering the last of the silver goblets from the high table when I noticed a folded piece of parchment beneath Lady Anne's seat. Glancing around to ensure no one was watching, I retrieved it and slipped it into my pouch alongside Sir James's falcon. Only when I returned to the cramped chamber I shared with the other kitchen maids, after they had all fallen asleep, did I dare to examine my discovery. The parchment was fine quality, the folds crisp and precise. It bore no seal or address. I hesitated, aware that reading another's private correspondence was a serious breach of propriety. but I had already involved myself in matters far beyond the normal boundaries of my station. If this note contained information that might affect the safety of Castle Goodrich, I needed to know. Unfolding the parchment carefully, I tilted it toward the faint moonlight streaming through our small window. The message, written in a delicate feminine hand, was brief. The forest path at dawn. Come alone. What we discussed remains possible despite all the initial left little doubt as to the author Lady Anne. But who was the intended recipient? Sir James seemed the obvious answer, yet something about the tone of the message gave me pause. What we discussed remains possible suggested a plan, an arrangement beyond a simple romantic meeting. I refolded the parchment and tucked it back into my pouch, troubled by its implications. Should I bring it to Sir James, assuming he was its intended recipient, or to Lady Elizabeth, who had trusted me with her own secret communications, or to Sir Richard, who had asked me to report anything concerning castle safety? Before I could reach a decision, the castle bell tolled midnight. I would need what rest I could get before beginning another day of service during these tense negotiations. I would decide what to do with the note in the morning after further reflection. Sleep came fitfully, troubled by dreams of burning villages and secret passages that led to places both wondrous and terrible. I awoke before dawn, as was my habit, but today with a sense of urgency born of something beyond my usual duties. The note I had found mentioned the forest path at dawn. Whatever meeting it proposed would occur soon. I needed to decide quickly what to do. Instinct, rather than reasoned analysis, guided my next actions. I dressed quickly in the dim light, careful not to wake the other maids. From beneath my pallet, I retrieved a small bundle containing the clothes Lady Elizabeth had provided for my journey to Tintern, the simple but sturdy garments that had allowed me to pass for a merchant's daughter or yeoman's wife. I changed into them swiftly, knowing they would attract less attention outside the castle than my servant's attire. With Sir James's silver falcon and Lady Anne's note secure in my pouch, I slipped from the chamber and made my way through the sleeping castle. The pre-dawn hours were among the quietest, with the night watch growing drowsy at their posts and the day servants not yet risen. I didn't dare use the secret passage by which I had returned from Tintinet, was too likely to be watched, given the current tensions. Instead, I made my way to the kitchen garden, where a small postern gate provided access for servants gathering herbs and vegetables. The gate was locked at night, but I had seen Master Cook hide the key beneath a loose stone in the garden wall. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and moments later I was outside the castle walls, making my way toward the forest path mentioned in Lady Anne's note. I had a general idea of where it must be to the east of the castle, leading to the disputed pastures. Dawn was just breaking as I reached the edge of the forest. Mist clung to the ground, swirling around the ancient oaks and elms that marked the boundary between civilized land and wilderness. I moved cautiously, staying within the tree line to avoid being seen from the castle walls. A narrow path, little more than a game trail, wound eastward through the forest. This must be the meeting place Lady Anne had specified. I followed it for perhaps half a mile before coming to a small clearing dominated by a massive oak tree, its trunk gnarled and twisted with age. There, already waiting, stood Lady Anne. She was alone, as her note had instructed her correspondent to be. Her rich riding dress seemed incongruous in these wild surroundings, its deep blue fabric a stark contrast to the forest greens and browns. Her auburn hair was partially covered by a silk veil, but strands had escaped to frame her face. giving her a more vulnerable appearance than she had presented at the feast. I hung back, concealing myself behind a large elm. Who was she waiting? For Sir James, or someone else entirely? My question was answered moments later when a figure emerged from the opposite side of the clearing, not Sir James, but a man I recognized as one of Baron Mortimer's men-at-arms, his surcoat bearing the black boar on crimson. "My lady," he said, bowing slightly, "your father awaits your report." "Tell him the situation is as we expected," Lady Anne replied, her voice carrying clearly in the still morning air. "Lord William refuses to concede the eastern pastures. He claims ancestral rights, just as my father does. And the relic, have you confirmed its location?" Lady Anne shook her head. "Not precisely. Sir James mentioned only that it lies beneath the old shepherd's hut in the eastern meadow. He knows nothing of its exact nature, only that it was brought back from the Crusades and is of great spiritual value." My breath caught in my throat. Sir James had revealed the location of the hidden relic to Lady Anne. Even if he didn't know its exact nature, this was a significant betrayal of his family's secrets. "What of your other task?" the man asked, his tone suggesting this was the more important matter. Lady Anne's posture stiffened. "Sir James trusts me," she said, a note of defiance entering her voice. "But he will not betray his father by opening the eastern gate on the third night. He is principled in his own way." The man snorted. "Principles matter little when the Earl of Gloucester and the King himself are involved. Your father will be displeased. My father asks too much," Lady Anne snapped, her composure cracking momentarily. Using me to extract information from a man whom she stopped abruptly, regaining control of her emotions. "Tell my father I have done what I can. If he wishes to take the castle by force, that is his decision. But do not expect me to deliver Sir James into his hands like a lamb to slaughter." The man-at-arms bowed again, though the gesture contained a hint of mockery. "As you say, my lady, though I wonder if your father will see it the same way." He turned to leave, then paused. "The mercenaries are in position. With or without Sir James's cooperation, we move tonight. I suggest you find a way to be elsewhere when the attack begins." With those ominous words, he disappeared back into the forest, leaving Lady Anne alone in the clearing. She remained motionless for several moments, her face turned toward the rising sun, its golden light illuminating tears on her cheeks. Then, squaring her shoulders, she began walking back toward the castle. I waited until she was out of sight, before emerging from my hiding place, my mind racing with what I had overheard. Baron Mortimer planned to attack Castle Goodrich tonight, with mercenaries already positioned in the surrounding forest. The assault would come regardless of whether Sir James could be persuaded to facilitate it by opening the eastern gate. Lady Anne had apparently been sent to seduce information from Sir James both about the relic's location and to secure his help in the coming attack. She had succeeded in the former, but failed in the latter, and judging by her emotional reaction, her feelings for Sir James had become genuine, complicating her father's plans. I needed to return to the castle immediately, to warn Lord William and Sir Richard of the impending attack. But as I turned to retrace my steps, a hand clamped over my mouth from behind, and a strong arm pinned my own arms to my sides. Not a sound, a familiar voice hissed in my ear. "Or we both die here." And now, epilogue, the truth of castle life. The hand over my mouth loosened slightly, allowing me to turn my head enough to see my captor. Sir James's face was inches from mine, his expression a mixture of anger and concern. "What are you doing here?" he demanded in a fierce whisper, releasing me but keeping a firm grip on my arm. "I found a note," I explained quickly, reaching into my pouch to produce Lady Anne's message. It fell from her seat at the feast. I came to see who she was meeting. Sir James scanned the note, his brow furrowing. "And you took it upon yourself to investigate rather than bringing this to me or my father?" There was no good answer to that question. In truth, I had acted on impulse, driven by curiosity and a growing sense of involvement in the Castle-S affairs that extended beyond my proper station. "I heard everything," I said instead, changing the subject to more urgent matters. "Baron Mortimer plans to attack tonight. He has mercenaries positioned in the forest." "I know," Sir James replied grimly. "I've been tracking their movements for days. That's why I followed Lady Anne this morning. Suspected she might be her father's informant." He tucked the note into his own pouch and gestured for me to follow him. We moved deeper into the forest, away from the path where Lady Anne had met with her father's man-at-arms. "She told him about the relic," I said as we walked, "that it's beneath the old shepherd's hut in the eastern meadow." Sir James's lips curved in a humorless smile. A partial truth I fed her, suspecting her loyalty might be divided. "The relic was once kept there, but my grandfather moved it decades ago." I felt a rush of relief that Castle Goodrich's most valuable secret remained secure, followed quickly by curiosity. "What is this relic that men would kill for it?" Sir James stopped walking, turning to face me directly. "A fragment of the true cross," he said quietly. "Encased in gold and studded with gems. Yes, but its true value lies in what it represents to Veen. Authority. The Earl of Gloucester believes possession of it would legitimize his ambitions for greater power, perhaps even influence over the crown itself." The weight of this revelation settled over me. A piece of the cross on which Christ himself had died here, hidden somewhere within the lands of Castle Goodrich. No wonder the Earl coveted it so desperately. "We must return to the castle," Sir James continued, already moving again through the forest. "My father must be warned of tonight's attack, and preparations made." We travelled swiftly, taking a more direct route than the one I had followed. As we emerged from the forest, within sight of Castle Goodrich's imposing walls, Sir James paused once more. "What you have done leaving the castle alone, intercepting private correspondence, eavesdropping on nobility, would be considered serious transgressions by most," he said, his tone stern but not unkind. "Yet your actions may have confirmed what we suspected and given us crucial time to prepare." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair that had escaped my coif behind my ear, the gesture surprisingly gentle. "You are an unusual woman, Margaret of the Kitchens, far more than your station would suggest." Something in his gaze made my heart beat faster, but before I could respond, he had turned away and was striding toward the castle gate with the confident bearing of a nobleman born to command. I followed more slowly, aware that once we passed through that gate, our brief moment of equality in the forest would end. He would return to being Sir James, heir to Castle Goodrich, and I would once again be Margaret, the kitchen maid who had temporarily risen above her station due to extraordinary circumstances. Yet, as I watched his retreating figure, I knew something fundamental had changed. I had glimpsed a world beyond the kitchens and servants' quarters, world of politics, intrigue, hidden treasures, and momentous decisions. I had played a small but meaningful role in events that would determine the fate of Castle Goodrich and all who dwelled within its walls. Whatever happened in the coming siege, whether Castle Goodrich stood firm against Baron Mortimer's attack or fell to treachery and foresight, would never again see myself as merely a kitchen maid, invisible and inconsequential in the greater workings of the world. As I approached the castle gate, the guards recognizing and admitting me without question thanks to my return with Sir James, I reflected on the true nature of life within these stone walls. Castle life was indeed as Brother Michael had described to me during my visit to Tintern Abbey, organized, ceremoniosa, cold, damp, and malodorous. The realities of poor sanitation, the constant struggle against the elements, the rigid social hierarchies, these remained unchanged by my brief adventure into realms usually reserved for nobility. Yet beneath these physical truths lay a more complex reality. Castles were not merely military fortifications or uncomfortable dwelling places. They were crucibles where human ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and courage met and transformed one another. They housed not just lords and ladies, knights and servants, but ideas and secrets, histories and futures, interwoven in patterns far more intricate than the finest tapestry in Lady Elizabeth's solar. I entered the kitchen to find it already in full chaotic activity, preparing the morning meal for the castle's residents and noble guests. Master Cook looked up briefly as I appeared, frowning at my unconventional attire, but seemingly too preoccupied to question it. "Margaret," he barked, "the dough needs kneading. We are short-handed with all these visitors to feed." I moved to the familiar workable, sinking my hands into the soft, yielding dough with practiced motions. The simple, repetitive task allowed my mind to continue its reflections. Perhaps this was the greatest truth about castle life, that beneath the surface of daily routines and rigid social structures flowed currents of human drama as powerful and unpredictable as any river. Kings and kitchen maids, lords and stable boys, all were caught in these currents, sometimes drowning in them, sometimes managing to swim against them, but always shaped by their flow. As for me, Margaret of the Kitchens, once merely a pair of hands to knead dough and serve wine, now privy to secrets that could determine the fate of Kingdom's Eye, had found my own small place in the greater story of Castle Goodrich. Whatever came next, I would face it with the same courage and determination that had carried me through forests alone and into the confidence of nobility. The castle bell tolled, signaling the beginning of another day. Through the narrow kitchen window, I could see the sun rising fully above the eastern forest, illuminating Castle Goodrich's stone walls with golden light. The same walls that had always surrounded me, yet now seemed somehow less confining. Within hours, those walls would face their greatest test. Baron Mortimer's mercenaries would attack under cover of darkness, seeking not just the disputed pastures, but the precious relic hidden somewhere within Castle Goodrich's domain. Lord William, Sir Richard, and Sir James would defend what was theirs with steel and strategy. Lady Elizabeth would watch and wait, her own plans unfolding behind a mask of serene nobility. And I would observe it all with new eyes, understanding for the first time the true complexity of the world in which I had always lived. The life of a castle was not found in its cold stone walls or smoky great halls, not in its damp corridors, or even in the soaring chapel where we knelt in prayer. The true life of a castle resided in the hearts and minds of those who dwelled within it, their fears and hopes, their secrets and sacrifices, their small kindnesses and great betrayals. And in that life I had found my own Fin.